So in today's video, we're going to be talking about which masters should you take if you wanted to before you embark on a PhD. Which one is the best for you? Which one will give you the better edge in terms of an MSc, MRes, or an MPhil? We're going to dive through each of these and see which one is the best for you if you are considering going ahead with a PhD in the near future. Now, some of these names you might be familiar with, some of them you might not be. Don't worry about all of that. We're going to go through which ones these are and how best they are suited for you if you are thinking of going to do a PhD, in particular in the STEM field. So this is a question I often look back on myself and regret not potentially doing a master's, because it could have better equipped me for the PhD that I had. I had to jump through because, I made a rash decision in terms of starting a PhD at the time, and a lot of those are benefits. But if I look into hindsight, yes, a master's could be of benefit, but hindsight is a beautiful thing. So to better prepare you for your research in terms of which one is particular, we're going to go through each of these now. So before we go into each one and which one's the best for you, let's recap on what those three types of masters are. They're particularly found in the UK. It might be in Europe and America. If you are from those countries and from those areas of planet Earth, do let me know in the comment section down below if you have variations of masters as well. But I'm particularly speaking about the UK, which naturally does coalesce with other countries in terms of the type of masters. So to recap, we have an MSc, MRes, and an MPhil. Now, MSc generally is quite common in most universities because it's seen as a master's, a taught degree where you get to have advanced knowledge of certain areas within the field that you did your undergrad on. So as an example, you have biomedical science and you can do an MSc in advanced biomedical science. So you get to learn advanced knowledge in certain areas, and you do a research project towards the end. So that's kind of a short crash course into what an MSc is. However, an MRes is actually a research degree where you do research for a whole year in a particular field. You acquire skills, techniques, not to a level of a PhD, but actually quite a bit, and you submit a kind of like a mini dissertation, mini thesis towards the end. And that's actually a good way to learn, but we're going to go through in a bit more detail later on. But why an MRes is actually quite useful if you're considering to do a PhD. Now, the best way to describe an MPhil is that it is a step below a PhD in terms of qualification. But it's kind of like a shortened version of what a PhD generally entails. You go through that same process of being independent in terms of thinking about your research. You do submit a piece of a thesis at the end. You do a lot of research similar to what you do in a PhD, but not to that extent. So there are comparable similarities between an MRes and an MPhil, but a lot of stark differences in terms of skills development and kind of intellectual capabilities that you develop in each of these different masters. And the thing is, with MPhil, it gives you the closest kind of representation or feel factor of what a PhD actually is without actually doing one straight away. So in terms of being familiar and mimicking the environment of what PhD is, an MPhil is definitely closer than an MRes in terms of what a PhD actually entails. So that is a snapshot between each of those masters and how they are actually governed and how they form. But the question is, which one is suited to you if you are thinking of doing a PhD? Now, the answer is not one of them. Now, it depends on which stage you are at in terms of your decision-making process for a PhD, or you're set on it, you're unsure, you want to have a flavor, you're not sure about research. All of those things dictate which masters you should actually do. Now, we're going to go through them in stages. Now, stage one is that if you are slightly unsure. If you are, then having advanced knowledge of different areas is actually quite useful, because you get to have a flavor as to which type of research you are interested in, because you get to have a better understanding. You don't do as much lab work with an MSc because it's, again, a lot of theory based as well. So if you want to have a general understanding of the different areas where there are research, because you probably wouldn't get that in an undergrad, then an MSc might be of benefit, because you then have options. Because if you're unsure about doing a PhD, an MSc can lead to other things because you've had a taught master's. However, if you are thinking about doing research but you don't have had much lab experience, then an MRes is definitely something I would consider. Now, if I was going back, I would have probably done an MRes, because you get to learn a lot of techniques, you get to be in a research group, you get a good amount of supervision because you're a master's student, not a PhD student yet. So you get a lot of that support that you need in terms of building confidence and building the skills. You would probably be working with PhD students, so you can ask them and learn from them. So it might be a good experience, and that's something I would probably consider for most people, because end of the day, you get to write a thesis, you get to put together an entire mini project, And I think it's a good stepping stone, because if you were to think of doing a PhD, it's a nice bridge. But then you're probably wondering, why would I then do an MPhil? Now, the reason why an MPhil is worth looking into is that not many universities have an MRes program. Now, MRes and MPhil can be seen as interchangeable, even though they're all different degrees and the way you go about it is different. But the core principles of why would you go embark on it is similar. You want to get research experience, you want to work with PhD students, you want to develop your own skills, develop yourselves as an independent thinker and researcher to prep yourself for a PhD. If that is what you're thinking, then yes, each one of these could be possible. But the reason why MPhil is probably less likely is most PhD programs have that factored in, which is why I would only advise you to do a master's if you don't feel as confident, or you want to develop some certain skills and gain an extra qualification before you commit to a 4-year or 5-year course. But most of these fully funded programs have that MPhil element already integrated. So technically you are doing an MPhil before you do a PhD. But if you wanted to have a better distinction between the three, that's how I would see it. If you're unsure and you want to gain extra qualification, give yourself options, do an MSc. If the university is local to you or the university that are interested in you have MRes programs, definitely look into it if you are considering doing a PhD, because it's a good model in order for you to step onto a PhD. If your universities don't have those and you're not sure about committing to a PhD, then look into the MPhil programs. But I would probably suggest that most fully funded programs, as I mentioned earlier, will have that kind of MPhil element. So the first year isn't as daunting as you probably think. And I would probably go with the latter if you are interested in doing it. So I hope that helps to give you an idea of what these different masters are and which one you should go to and which one you should apply or look into, depending on which stage you are in terms of your research interest, in terms of doing a PhD. Hopefully that does help. If you've got any more questions, do find me down below in the comments. You can email me, Aamir at ResearchTribe.org. You can find me on Instagram, it's a bit quicker for you, Aamir.phd, and Threads, which has actually been really interesting. I'll put the link here and a link down below. Find me on any one of these if you've got any questions, and I'll try my best to hopefully help you in that decision making process about thinking of doing a master's or a PhD. So good luck with your decisions if you are thinking about it, but I shall hopefully see you in the next one. Before I leave, if you do want to subscribe, that would be amazing. Thank you. Take care.